Well, hello, Scott Baker. Happy Sunday.
Indeed, Mikey. And this field note that we'll be discussing today indicts the very premise of how we do lead better at usually 3 o'clock Eastern time, not 3:04,
Yeah.
not 2:57.
Yeah.
But the title of the field note is Odd Times Trick the Brain, in good ways, maybe, in other weird ways. Well, let's explore.
Yeah. I also thought that we shouldn't make this conversation exactly 15 minutes every day. Maybe we should make it 14 minutes.
Yeah, but you know what? It's never exactly 15 minutes. Sometimes it's 17 minutes. Yeah.
Right. So I noticed that we could do this without time as well. I noticed these speed limit signs, these odd speed limit signs that people intentionally do just to, kind of poke people off script. So that, the speed limit here is 18 miles an hour, which means, does it really mean 20? But they want to make sure that you stay at 20, right? This kind of thing happens quite a bit.
Do you think it works?
I do. The first time I ever saw it was at a campground where the speed limit posted was fractional. It was like 16 3/4 miles per hour is what I saw on that sign. And it definitely worked for me. I wanted to bring it to my own campground where we were staying.
Yeah. Well, here's what I like about this field note, because it's not a trivial field note. So, every now and then we'll have a field note over the 4.5 years we've done these, and thanks to everybody around the world who reads them regularly. And sometimes they are very kind of conceptual or philosophical. They're always behavioral, but sometimes they're big picture. Sometimes you think, well, wait, are we actually talking about why a plane that takes off at 10:12 has more people on time to the gate than one that takes off at 10:10? Because you're trying to do the math in your head. And so be aware of how people are trying to trick you. The instigating premise of this was, there was an article in the Wall Street Journal a week or so ago. And it was an interview with a designer. And he just mentioned in the interview that he sets his clock in the morning for, I think it was 5:27, something like that. Because if you set it for 5:30, you're kind of like, well, snooze. I could even snooze again. Right. Yeah. But if you kind of set it for 5:27 or 5:37, you're kind of like, I can't even think about what the 5-minute snooze, where that takes me. I'm just getting up. Right now, you could get used to that. So, but I think that the factor in this field note is that when we think about time, and we have an entire time module in our playbook that we have for our subscribers on our digital platform, there's a lot of ideas about how you deal with time. And some of them, again, are sort of very philosophical and behavioral, and others are kind of like, well, that's so practical. I never even thought of that. But There is nothing more important for leaders or for any human being than to think about how we deal with time and attention. That is actually all we have. And so a simple field note about how odd times trick the brain is actually at the very root of the most important things that we could actually be discussing.
Yeah, it does seem like this could be a little bit trivial. And oftentimes the behaviors that you're referring to that are in our playbook seem overly simple. It's like, really? This is the thing that admired leaders do? And you end up saying to yourself, I've done that, right? And what you're really reflecting on is the fact that you've done it once or twice. And we're pointing it out like, no, these are the behaviors that they end up doing all the time. It's part of their natural, normal routine. And actually taking time to be able to think through these somewhat like I could have written this email, this field note. That's not that big of a deal, but actually taking time to do the trick the brain kind of thing, and actually incorporate this into your life. It's an odd little thing that admired leaders do, and we should probably learn from it.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't think it necessarily means that you have to, and the field note says this, you don't have to start scheduling meetings at 10:03. That's not necessarily people are just going to be like, you're weird. And so this is more about just being aware of what other people are doing to you, and that we all know this in terms of pricing. Sometimes we're very counterintuitive. Like we have like field notes totally free. There's no. We're not rounding up from 99 cents, or rounding down to free from that. Right. But we have a products that are, tens of dollars a month. We have products that are hundreds of dollars a month, but we tend to just price them at what they are, and not be like, this one is $99.98, like you would see. But marketers know that at any regular product, and probably car pricing and different things like that. So the point is this works for this designer in the way that he sets the clock for his morning to kind of get himself going. Now, I notice I set my clock for a certain time, and that even if I don't set the alarm clock, like this morning, I got up at the same time. Like my body just said, okay, we're awake now. I was like, really? Can't you sleep? No, we're done. Right? So there was no opportunity to hit the snooze button there, at all. But I think that the effect under this should not be, this would be my part of the Sunday message here, is you don't say, gosh, I'm going to set my alarm for 5:27 instead of 5:30 because I need that extra 3 minutes. I'm not going to go back to sleep because there's so much to get done in the day, and I'm just going to launch into this thing in a frenzy. That's actually not how admired leaders work. Admired leaders kind of generally radiate a kind of calm enjoyability about what they do. So there are elements that we discuss around this idea of there's a lot to process and a lot that goes on, and there's a lot of things competing for our attention that do not have our best interests in mind. And so the goal here is not to save you a couple of seconds so that you can scroll more later. The question is, how are you setting yourself up to be the most effective person and leader you can be that day for yourself, for your family, for those on your team? And I think that sometimes that actually is using things that structure our awareness of time in a way that gives us a chance to have a deeper level of productivity. And perhaps, as Cal Newport talks about, maybe doing fewer things and doing them better.
Right. Now, the internet currently is attributing the idea of 7-minute meetings to Gary Vaynerchuk. I don't know if he's the one who actually came up with it, or if he's just the one who kind of popularized it online.
Could be, yeah.
But this notion of saying we're gonna do a stand-up meeting for 7 minutes is really a communication that I'm going to get through this quickly. I'm not going to ramble about anything. I've got 2 or 3 things to communicate. And for me, what I've seen is oftentimes a 7-minute meeting will turn into a 3-minute meeting, right? But it really becomes this upper limit that says I'm going to respect everybody's time. And it's a title. It's almost it's a communication that shows up in a way that says it's really important to me to kind of hold us to that. Is the 5:47 alarm clock? It's a personal thing. You're doing that to your own brain, right? I don't know if Bobby Burke it mentions this a lot. Or if it just happened to come up in the interview because of the very specific question that was asked of him, at what time does he wake up? So he thought, oh, this is a fun way for me to actually say, I get up. I know exactly when I get up every morning. It's at 5:47 a.m., right? But if you don't have a problem with that, maybe you shouldn't implement it, right? Your body works in such a way that you kind of don't just lay in bed like other people. Because for your issue, it's if you wouldn't go back to sleep, so there's not a problem with you. There
are problems with me.
Yeah, I know, but this particular one is there's no issue around the idea of just laying in bed. There's other people who don't care about going back to sleep. They just want to lay in bed for another 20 minutes, right? And there's this internal debate that allows them to feel so anything that you debate about, anything that is a decision that you're making too early, this is kind of one of those pre-decision decisions, right? You're I want to lay my stuff out in the morning or at night so that I don't even have to think about it in the morning. There's other reasons to be able to do that on a regular basis. Yeah. So you just it points out to me that you just as a leader need to think about everything. You need to think through it all and make decisions. And some of it is for the reason of not having to think through it every single day. You just want to think about it once, make that decision for yourself, and not think about it again.
Mm-hmm. I have a feeling that while this morning wake up time works for Bobby Birkin the way that he's described, that perhaps the odd times tricking the brain is the thing that is not necessarily the everyday. For it to be an odd time, it actually needs to be odd. Like, so maybe there's a reason for that. And look, if you actually called a meeting for, at 2:45, that is, in many places, that's odd enough, right? So that you're kind of saying, because look, there are ways that we're built in to the sort of the way that reality lays itself out to us in terms of time and calendar. And people have lived this way for a very long time. And you can't just say, you know what, here in 2025, I'm going to do it a lot differently than any other human being, the 100 billion people that have ever lived that we could sort of estimate have done it, and this will work better. Probably won't work entirely better. So we have rhythms of days and months and weeks and all of these other things, and there are ways that people go about the day. And I think that if right now you looked around and said, well, where are we a couple decades into this whole internet experiment and this social media experiment? And you said, how are we doing here? Which leaders are doing the very best? Like, that seem to be not only just because when we talk about, remember, in admired leadership, it's not just that you're effective all the time. It's that, like, you're producing results, but you actually have people that want to follow you. Right. And so you have this balance of results and relationships that's going on. Same thing with this thing about time. If you're frantic to kind of keep up onto your schedule, and you do, and you finish the day, and then it's back into the marathon tomorrow, and you're the allostatic load, they call it, of just tension on you, like, that's not sustainable, over time, just because you get up at 5:47 on a particular day. So it's in most things, it's the thing that is the exception needs to be the exception. It needs to be the thing that's around the periphery, and that's what makes it unique. And sometimes that's a period of extra rest and reflection. And sometimes it's the odd time to get something jolted in you. But I think that the challenge for us, particularly here at the end of the year and going into the new year, a field note like this says, well, let's think about our relationship with time, and what that would look like in a healthier way. I'm going to guess that probably if anybody watching or listening is scoring themselves internally on how are you doing, like even compared to like 20 years ago. Right. Do now I feel like I had more bandwidth in my day 20 years ago, that my curiosity and my work and all of that had a better ebb and flow? I probably do. Right. Now, it makes me think that this field note's not really about the odd times part. It's about tricking the brain part, right? So I wonder if there's other things in your life where you've tricked your brain, right? Whether it's trivial or important ways, where there's a regular thing that you're doing where you're tricking your brain. Well, I mean, I do think a lot about time. We on our community conference a couple of years ago interviewed Oliver Burkeman, who's written some very philosophical works about the nature of time, and that's actually kind of why they're important and helpful, because they're not just like, here's how you run your to-do list. Because Oliver Burkeman is saying, well, why are you running a to-do list? And he points out that if you're just super efficient, that's a river that never ends. And so, in fact, in our organizations, if you're the person that says, I got through all 72 things, guess what they do to you? They give you another 72 and then another 72. And in fact, your life gets worse because you were so efficient. And so you have to kind of step back and say, well, what is the nature of the way that I think about this? And you've heard me say, many people would be better off not having a to-do list, but having a to-who list, thinking about the relationships of the day and the way of who you're connecting with, who you're doing work with, who you're trying to make better, who you're seeking advice and insight from. That's another way. I mentioned Cal Newport, who's obviously someone who's written many bestsellers around these ideas, and he's, from his early ones to digital minimalism, and some of the new one. I think he has a new one on that even deals with current internet challenges and email. But one of his business partners, Scott Young, writes about these things. And he did an extensive dive over the last year around personal productivity things. And he, in The Nature of Time, went back to an idea. I can't remember the name of the authors. They had a particular book. But their focus is this idea of that the big productive thing that you do in a day that may take an hour and a half of very concentrated work is not like priority number one. It's not like you put this at the top of the card. It's not the thing that is central on your calendar with flashing lights. They call it the highlight, because ultimately you're not going to really be productive at anything you're doing if you don't really love it, right? Right. And a philosopher that I talked with recently, she talks about this idea of when we're trying to learn something, to know something, to do something, that is a relationship. There's a love relationship with that, right? Yeah. And so when Scott Young is pointing to these guys, we're saying, this is actually the highlight. So when you're at the beginning of the day and you say, what's the thing that I could do today that would need a concentrated period of 60, 90 minutes of my time? That might not be writing, producing a video, building a new table. It might be the conversation that you're going to have. It might be something that is less tactile, but it might be the highlight. So if you started to say, what would be the thing, like we've talked about Matthew Dix, the storyteller, and he's saying, like, there's a story of your day. And if you said, what is the story that I would like to tell about this day, when all I have to tell about this day is a story, what would be the thing that would be the highlight of that day? That's a different way. It's not, and I don't think it's necessarily tricking your brain. It's moving your brain in a better direction.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I was thinking maybe that was the wrong way to ask the question. Like, I do this thing where I don't choose favorites. Like, if I see myself developing like a favorite candy or favorite meal at a restaurant, I will. I want to reserve that as my favorite, right? Not that I want more variety in my life. Okay, that's one way to frame it. I'm like, I really want to reserve that as my favorite, so I'm going to intentionally choose something else and make that thing the routine thing, because I really want my favorite to stay my favorite.
Yes. Yeah. So, right. Yeah. So that you're not, it doesn't just become so familiar that it's not your favorite anymore. Right. Yeah.
Right.
Brilliant.
But that's a brain trick that is like, what am I actually doing? It's just vocabulary, right? That's all that I'm really doing.
Well, when I talked about the idea of time and attention and what we attend to and how our worldviews create worlds, and the way that we do this is through language. They're not just words. Mm-hmm. Words are the most fundamental thing that we have that actually give us the tools to create new versions of reality. Okay, it's all that we have.
So should we intentionally be using odd words as well? Like where?
Yeah, I think so. We know that actually in our presentation content, that lexical diversity and using odd words is very provocative and memorable.
And we're not just talking about a wide variety, like having an impressive vocabulary. We're talking about turning nouns into verbs in ways that normally don't exist in English. But so it's obvious what you mean by that, but you're making it a verbal, and then we're talking about it that way. The more you do that, the more it kind of does the same thing as posting a speed limit sign that says 18 on it.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yep. And it's why a field note that has a title like, how odd times trick the brain could sound trivial, but actually might be the most profound.
Right. Great. Fantastic. Appreciate it today. Thank you.
All right. See you, Mike.